going to learn a little bit about the 10 Sfiros. There are 10 attributes, 10 major ways that God relates with the world, and that we relate to God, whether we know it or not. These ways, these 10 aspects, are the underpinnings of the whole world. They're the foundation of everything. Everywhere you go, you can find how there's these 10 aspects come into play. So they are Keser. Keser means crown. Keser means crown. So with that is the highest level you can really reach, and that level of Keser, that is an aspect of that an expression of the greatest desire you can't even really express. It's inexpressible desire, actually, that every person has within themselves for God and for good things. Every person, no matter what he's going through, no matter where he is, he's going to feel a kind of inner compass that's going to guide him and move him towards good. And when he does something good, he's going to feel a very benevolent feeling of, positive and goodness. And that is something which is an expression of the deepest part of himself that wants only good, is inextricably bound up with the Creator and only wants to be with Him. So that's an aspect of Keser. When a person is able to get to this place of Keser, he's just filled with tremendous desire for God. That's one of the facets of Keser. I'm sure we'll speak more about it afterwards with God's help. And you have an aspect that's called Chachma. Right. So Chachma is, and in every person, we each have all of these elements. So you have this aspect of Chachma. Chachma, wisdom, literally, it's a place where a person becomes completely nullified to God. Right? Koachma. Chachma makes up this aspect of this power of what? Which means you just get to a little bit of a connection to God, and you just totally nullified. It's a level, a person who's able to really reach the level of Chachma, and certainly Keser, he's transcending nature, he's going above nature. And really that little place where you just start to get the germination, the beginnings of an idea, that's also an element that's called Chachma, this wisdom. Then you have Bina. Bina represents, the Zohar says Bina Liba. Bina is the heart. Bina represents the place where your heart also goes to a place that's above nature, and a person is able to do teshuvah, do repentance. When we want to really transform ourselves, you have a person who has trouble, whatever the trouble might be. He might have a problem with the temper. He might have a problem with all sorts of different, any aspect, any difficulty. And this is something that's in his nature. That's who he is. So you sometimes can find somebody who just worked hard, and someone who meets him years down the line or whatever it is, he seems to be a completely different person, totally changed. And when that happens, there has to be an inner transformation that made it possible. And sometimes a person can do this really quickly, and that has to do with accessing this level that's called Bina. And again, the Bina is also this very high aspect that's above nature. It's, generally speaking, it expresses itself the strongest in the heart, because the heart is going to be able to change. That's why the Zohar says Bina Liba, even though Bina is, generally speaking, it's something that has to be, it's cognitive, it's something you think about and you understand. It's not just understanding, it's when you really change yourself and your heart is moved in a completely different way. Now, there are actually 10 Sfiros, and nevertheless, we have another level called, which seems to be 11, right? It's not really 11, but it seems to be 11. That's called Das. So Das is the outer aspect of Keser. It's what we see. Because again, this deep desire for God that each of us had, and that God has for the good to come out of the world, that is something, again, it's very hard to really see that, because what that what that is in the world is God's master plan bringing the world to its completion. That's something that's very hard for us to look at in the everyday life. We don't always understand why one particular thing or another thing is bringing us to, even personally, to where we're supposed to be. We don't see that, we don't understand that. So what we usually see is called das. It's a kind of a way of, in its best form, is bringing these aspects, the chachma, the bina, bring it down into actuality, and bring it, it means understanding das, and means bringing it into reality. Like bring it down. It's kind of you have these two elements. You have on the one hand element, total complete nullification to God. That's like a person doesn't exist. It's all bliss. It's all this amazing, wonderful serenity. Right? Then you have this aspect that's called bina. Bina is again it's compared to like a fire. It's hard on fire. You want to change yourself. You want to transform. That in that place of serenity, you can get to this deep understanding that this has to change and that has to change. There are things that are holding me back from becoming who I'm supposed to be, from finding myself. These have to change. But the actual changing is going to be in the das. The das sort of equalizes and brings down, and homogenizes and synchronizes these different aspects of chachma and bina, this wisdom, this deep connection and nullification to God, and the bina, which is this aspect of fire, this flaming desire to connect and to change, transform, and brings them together in one, so that you're actually able to actualize the actions which you need to take in order to become better. That's why bina is when you start to recognize those actions. But again, you can't be too much to fire. When there's too much fire, it's also not good. You have to keep the serenity, keep the aspect of chachma, and also get this place where you understand one thing from the other. That's what the being. You have that fire. You're really genuine. You see what's really going on. So you're able to have the das, the aspect of wisdom, and say, I want to transform. I want to change. Then we have what's called the lower aspects. You have the aspect that's called chesed. Chesed means kindness. It's the source for love for God. So what that means is we want to become connected to God through doing kindness, through doing good, through being good. Right? So that's an aspect that's called chesed. Now, we know that Abraham was a vehicle for God in chesed. And what that means is that he was the ultimate expression of this divine attribute that's called chesed in the world. Then we have this aspect that's called gvura. Gvura is a source of limitation and also the source of, it literally means might. It's a source of fear or awe of God. Rav Nosson of Breslov explains that there's a verse in Proverbs. The verse says you have to have fear for life, and it says for vitality. He says when you have fear of God, you have to understand that what I do counts. What I do is meaningful, and therefore I'm going to do whatever I can not to lose touch. So we have this element, all of these elements. Every person, wherever we are, we're connected to the divine, and what we do brings down tremendous good, or unfortunately, it could be sometimes the opposite. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says when a person moves his hand, he's moving all the worlds. Everything that's connected is predicated, is sitting on him. Endless amounts of worlds with every movement. So we have to do our best to have positive and not to be in a place where we're doing negative and we're doing damage to ourselves, to others, to the world. This aspect of gvura, this aspect of might, also means being able to limit oneself. Being able to say, this is what I do, this is what I don't, having proper boundaries. But it especially is a realization that God is right here with me and that everything I do counts. And no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, it still all starts from right now. Right now, if I do good, wonderful. If I don't do good, well, I lost an opportunity and I have to start again and I have to do whatever I can to fix what was lost. So then we have the aspect that's called Tiferes. Tiferes, there are different ways of explaining how to translate Tiferes. One way is glory, one way is beauty. There are different ways of looking at what that means. Tiferes is Dveikos, one way of understanding it, which is again just like we said about Das, this kind of managing the two levels and homogenizing and synchronizing, making this one element out of it. So too Tiferes is similarly is doing the same thing. You have this aspect that's called Chesed, again this love for God, and you have this aspect that's called Yira, which is fear of God, limits, kindness, bounty, and then Tiferes is a place that's called truth, Emes, Dveikos, which is cleaving to God. When you have real truth, when you're really connected to the truth, so the right way, there's nothing higher. There's nothing higher because the seal of God is truth. So on the one hand, truth is the highest reality, the highest thing. On the other hand, truth is a little bit dangerous if it's misused or if it brings us to a place where we're far from Hashem. If we have this connection to truth and it distances us from God, so that truth we can't deal with right now. Sometimes a person is unable to face a certain truth, and doing so is going to just break them to pieces. So you have to know at that point, that's not what your place, what you're supposed to be working on, supposed to be looking at right now. Sometimes you have to, and you build things together depending. But sometimes when a person is, you meet these people, the person feels very, very bad about himself. He feels very bad because of this, because of that, because of the other thing. So we have to learn how to, that's the truth where you can't deal with that truth now and wait for the right time and the right way to do it. Then you have an aspect that's called the Netzach. Netzach means victory, right? Victory is Netzach. Now, Netzach means, what is the aspect of Netzach? The aspect of Netzach is this element of being able to be victorious in divine service. That is that's what's called having the right workable strategies for understanding how to actualize myself in divine service. That's what Netzach is. That's how you win through having the strategies and having the strategies to be able to put into workings the right strategies in order to be able to win through. Then we have the aspect that's called Hod. Hod is sometimes translated as beauty and sometimes translated as admitting. So you have this aspect that's called Hod. Hod means admitting. And again, and it brings out the beauty because and it is inextricably bound up with Netzach. Because Hod, the aspect that's called Hod, this is understanding what's going to prevent me from carrying out what I know I need to do, and admitting and say, hey, this is a weakness. I have to move it out of the way in order to be able to do what I'm supposed to do, in order to have, in order to make things happen. And then we have this aspect that's called Yesod. Yesod means foundation. Okay, the foundation of everything is a realization that what I do, it's building. You start to this dawning, this beginning of understanding that there's deep pleasure in knowing that I'm connecting and I'm actually what I'm doing. It's super important and I see the fruit that I am, the positive things that are coming out of what I'm doing, what I have done. And then you have this aspect that's called Malchus. Malchus means literally kingship. Okay, so we can divide these three things up first of all into three different levels. So we have this beginning that's called Malchus. Malchus means kingship. That means a person when things are difficult and things are hard, they need to be able to push through and take on the yoke of heaven. And it's an aspect of emunah, of faith, simple faith, and connecting to God. And when things are difficult, which says in the nighttime when things are hard, when things are there are challenges, that's when the malchus especially comes into play.